Hey there, my name is E.W. Buckley, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I want to talk to you about inspiration and generally why I think it's. Here's my theory of the case. If you allow yourself to be curious and inquisitive, then you will have no problem finding interesting things all the time, regardless of how large or small they may be. Now, the difference between something being interesting versus inspiring is your ability to act on it. Take a synthesizer, for example. You might find it really interesting, but if you don't know how to use it, your inspiration is only going to last so long as there are still presets for you to go through. And so, to cultivate inspiration, you must always be learning. Now that we have that out of the way, maybe let's address the bigger question here. Why am I here in the woods? Why am I here in the woods? The reason for that being is that some of my most inspiring sounds are organic sounds and field recordings. Let me come up to you here really quick. Okay. Hello again. A lot of producers don't think about using field recordings because they believe that they need a lot of fancy equipment to get anything worthwhile. And that is completely incorrect. I have a really nice Zoom H6 sitting at home, but it's honestly just been sitting at home gathering dust for years now, not because it isn't great, but because my iPhone is that much more convenient. So here is what we are doing in the woods today. I'm going to show you how to create field recordings using your smartphone. And then we're going to go back to the studio and I'm going to show you what you can do with those field recordings. So that way you have unlocked a way to take something that might be interesting to you and use it as an endless source of inspiration. We don't have to get too formal when recording with our smartphone. Really, the two big things that you want to worry about is whether your app is recording in mono or stereo, and whether it is recording lossless audio or not, meaning that it isn't compressing the file in any way that's going to diminish the dynamic range or the frequency response. Now, here's the thing. It's okay if it's mono and lossy. Great if it's lossless and stereo. This isn't about being perfect, it's about being actionable. And none of those things are deal breakers. The big thing is just being aware of what you're working with. Okay, so I actually want to pause on that point for a moment because when I got home, both the VO and some of the field recordings that I took with my phone sounded strange. And when I investigated the device itself, I realized that the microphone area was so full of dirt and gunk that it lobbed off a ton of my high end. In addition, I also recorded the VO in stereo when I intended to record it in mono. And these are things that simply I could have been aware of. Now, I am a firm believer in the 70% rule, so I kept what I had. But I also wanted to bring this up to you because I want to also double down on the point that it doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be actionable. So no matter the quality of your hardware, you can do this. And I want to point that out to you. Okay. Editor's note over. Let's jump back in. And with that, let's go record some sounds. Okay, great. Let's head back to the studio because I think I have more than enough to work with here. I'll see you there. So I'm back in the studio now and I have all of my sounds loaded up into Live. Now, the sounds that ended up resonating the most with me yesterday were the various ambiances that I found. So I'm going to take the 5 that I have here to turn into a pad. So the very first thing you want to do, always, before loading your samples into a sampler, is to do any sort of cleanup that's necessary on the timeline first. The reason for that being is simple. If you do your cleanup on the timeline, then all of the sound sculpting capabilities of your sampler can go towards making it sound interesting, not correcting any issues that are in your sound. And so on the track below, I have a copy of this sound that has been topped, tailed, and consolidated, and that sounds like this. And the next thing that I'm going to do is just add an EQ that lobs off anything below 150 Hertz, particularly if you're not drawing a resonance out in the bass range, ends up being a problem down the line when you actually drop your sample into a sampler. So we're going to cut that. So now the very next thing that I'm going to do is actually draw out a resonance. I'm going to take another instance of EQ8. And on one of the bands, I have set it to 262 Hertz, or to be more precise, 261.6 Hertz, which is C3. And I have then set the Q to the max of 18 and the gain to 15. And that starts to draw forth a pitch. It's faint, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to help bring it out by adding overtones from the harmonic series. And you can do this simply by taking this fundamental frequency and multiplying it by a whole number. So I'm going to do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I've already gone and done that. And so if I turn on each of these bands, we see that a resonance is being drawn out at each of these overtones, but it's getting quieter every single time. And to help make it even stronger, I'm going to go ahead and repeat the process on 2 more EQ8s. And the last one, I've reduced the scale a bit so I don't start clipping. So now with these 3 EQ8s played together in series, it sounds like this. And so we get not only the field recording, but we get this awesome C3 coming through that sounds almost like a flute in some ways. And then from there, I'm going to highlight my clip and I am going to bounce to new track. And at this stage, my sample is now prepped and ready to be dropped into my sampler. I'm going to go ahead and repeat this process with the remaining 4 samples. And once you're done, you can start building your instrument. Okay, so I have all of my samples tuned and prepped, ready to go. So now I'm going to get them all loaded up into Sampler. I'm going to expand the Zone tab here, which is where I'm going to place all my different samples, and I'm going to drop them all in. So right now, if I were to hit a note on my keyboard, they're all playing at once, and I don't necessarily want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Round Robin. If you do want to learn more about Round Robin, click the card above me and go to this video in which I talk exclusively about Round Robin's introduction to Sampler. So now I'm going to go over to the Filter Global tab really quick, and I'm going to increase the voice count to 32, so that way I can play many notes at once. So now from here, I could play a big fat chord, and it would honestly sound pretty damn good. So where you would want to take it from here has all to do with personal design choices. I'm going to show you quickly a couple of my favorite things to do. So Sampler is great for messing around with playback speed. And so I'm going to set up every sample to play back in reverse upon reaching its loop point, which this is great if you're creating drones or really long held out chords. And it's worth noting that the sample tab is individualized for each sample. So you will have to go through and do this for as many samples as you are using if you want that. Now, in a similar vein, another thing that I love doing is taking the reverse control and assigning it to a macro. So I'm just going to group this on itself, and then I'm going to map this to macro 1. So now I can force the samples to play back in reverse. So here's it playing forward. And in reverse. Now, additionally, if we go over to the modulation tab, we can actually set up an envelope to control the sample playback start point. And it's very simple. All we need to do is select sample offset from the drop-down menu, crank that to 100%, and then I'm going to assign the peak control to a macro.
So if I go over to a sample, and I'm going to go ahead and solo this one so we can just force the view to remain on this, we'll see that as I pan through the peak, it's going to move this start point. You can, of course, go crazy with effect chains as well, but let this be your jumping off point. Now, let's talk again about what I said at the beginning. So at the beginning of this video, I said that the difference between something being interesting and something being inspiring is your ability to act on it. And I sincerely mean that. It is completely how I view musical creativity, because there is this persistent nagging belief in music making that some part of it is divine or is luck, and that only few people have access to it. And ultimately what that ends up being is a vehicle for gatekeeping. But as somebody who has literally at this point across several institutions taught over 500 music producers, it isn't true. I'm interested on what's actionable and what can move the needle forward for myself and also for you. Inspiration is important, but it is not divine. It is not lucky. It is not random. It is cultivated. And if you know how to cultivate inspiration, you will always be inspired. It's exactly what the pros do. And so I hope that this technique, in which you can truly take any sound that you have found non-musical and turn it into music, helps you capture what is interesting and turn it into something inspiring. Now, before we wrap up, I want to let you know that if you are interested in having the exact instrument that I built for this video, and you just saw demonstrated there at the end, it is a part of my total bundle. You can also pick it up on its own directly from my website. It's the primary way that I invite people to support the work that I am doing here on this channel. I don't have a Patreon or anything like that. Instead, I offer private lessons and coaching and my presets and courses from my website. So if you want to support what I'm doing here, please, of course, keep watching the videos. That's great. But consider picking up some of the offerings from my website. Now, as always, thank you so much for watching, liking, subscribing, leaving comments. I am putting this out there publicly every video that I'm trying really hard to grow this channel to 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. And it seems like I'm getting close to 5,000 subscribers here, at least at the time of filming this. If I'm lucky, maybe I've crested it by now. But we're about halfway through the year and I've hit the halfway mark. So thank you for consistently showing up for me as I'm trying to consistently show up for you. Now, go out and make some music, find that inspiration, cultivate that inspiration, and till next time.